Hey guys, Brian here from LCS. Thanks for stopping by the channel and this video, when to sell your comic books. So I want to give you some of my tips on when you may want to sell some of your books, your collection. There's a ton of speculation in the comic book market. Comic books or characters get hot when they are tied to a project, to a movie or a TV show on one of the streaming services. So, there's a lot of news and changes in the market, almost daily. So there are four things that I try to follow with my collection and collecting of comic books. So the first one is there is no way to time the market, right? Market fluctuations happen all of the time, right? We see, prices increase, they decrease. Books get hot because, like I said, they're tied to a certain, rumor or, potential movie project. You look at other markets, real estate market, right? Right now we're seeing, some craziness in the real estate market because of the number of people that have been working home over the last year or so, people moving out of cities. So the real estate market is crazy. And there's a lot of these factors that recently popped up that are driving that. Stock market can be, you can say the same for the stock market. There are fluctuations, day after day. One day it's up, the next day it's down. And so when you think of the comic book market, it's very similar. There are things, outside, forces and rumors that affect it. And so it's really tough to be able to time it and say, I know I'm going to get the best, price for my book, at this time, because it's just, there's too many things that are occurring and fluctuating on a daily basis to really be able to time it. My second thing that I try to follow is buy low and sell high, right? I mean, that is almost, cliche, right? But when, you want to buy things at the lowest price possible, right? So buy things when they're on sale, right? When you get yourself a good deal, when somebody is looking to get out of collecting, or when somebody maybe needs the money for other things, some other priority in their lives, they may be able to look to sell their books on a discount, right? And so one of the best things you can do to position yourself to be ready for that is to have cash, right? To have cash savings for the collecting, to be able to strike when you find a great deal. You may be able to take advantage on a deal that somebody else may not be able to because they don't have the money available to do that. So, and those situations are going to come up from time to time. I've seen it, where people are looking to get out of collecting altogether, or reduce the size of their collection, or they're moving and they can't take all of the books with them. So there's a number of different factors, but you really want to try to minimize the price you're paying for things so that you'll have better future value. And this ties into the next point. So point number three is you make your money at the buy. And what do I mean by that? If you get the best deal and lowest prices when obviously when you purchase something, it gives you more room for growth and for potential profit, right? So if I'm buying a hot spec book and I'm paying current market price for it, there may be not a lot of room for it to grow. If I can get it a little bit less than what it's going at, then I give myself a little bit more room. And let me give you an example of how I bought low and really made my money at the buy. So last year I purchased about 10 to 12 short boxes of comics. So I saw an ad on, I think it was Craigslist, somebody looking to get rid of their collection, reached out. We met up and basically found out that the guy who had the collection was moving. He was moving out of state. He couldn't pack. He didn't want to pack and bring all of these books with him. And so, I went, looked over the books. They were in great shape, bagged, boarded, stored, properly. I didn't go through every single book, but I saw enough that I really thought the collection was a great collection, and potentially worth 4 or 5 times what I'd be offering for it. So we negotiated a little bit. I ended up paying, I think, around somewhere between $450 and $500 for let's say 10 short boxes. So my total cost was under $1, per book. And so, got all the books home, went through them, and found a number of key books, in the lot. And some of the books I sold raw, and so I didn't get as much value, but a lot more than what I had paid for them. And then I came across Clone Wars #1. So this was the first print, first appearance of Ahsoka, who was shortly after acquiring that book was rumored to be in The Mandalorian, the TV show on the streaming service Disney Plus. And so I took that book. It was a good, looked very clean raw copy. Had it sent off, pressed, cleaned, and graded at CGC. And the book came back at a 9.6. And I knew that there was rumors about the Mandalorian and Ahsoka being, in the series. And so after the episode aired that, she appeared in season 2 of The Mandalorian, I put that book up for sale. And that book sold for very quickly in like 2 days, if not less, for $1,450. So this was a book that I paid less than $1 for in a large lot. But I did spend a little bit more money. I had to get it pressed and cleaned and graded, and shipped back and forth. And so maybe I was in the book for a total of maybe $100. So I ended up selling it for $1,450, and so there was a big profit, right? But I made my money when I bought it because I got it at such a low price and such a great deal that I was able to maximize, my profit. And I sold that book late last year. I took a peek at the current prices for a 9.6 copy of the Clone Wars #1. And it ranges anywhere from, I've seen $1,000 to $1,500. So I think I did really well. Maximized my profit. I've got a pretty good price for it. And with a low investment price, with everything, shipping, grading, everything, I really maximized my profit. So the last tip number 4, is that I would suggest for when you're looking to sell your comic books, is graded books remove subjectiveness, right? If you have a raw book, I may look at it and give it, a particular grade, and I'm not an expert grader, I'm still learning, but I may look at it and say, oh, that's an 8.0. And you may look at it and say, oh, it's a 9.0, right? And so if we're haggling over the price or the condition, that's going to change. If I think it's an 8.0, I'm going to offer you less. If you think it's a 9.0, you're going to expect more for the book. But if it's not graded, it's really very subjective. So if you have a book that has good value, I would suggest having it graded. Now, the rule of thumb that I try to follow with graded books, or when to get books graded, is, I'm looking at the overall, initial cost to acquire the book, the cost to get it pressed and cleaned, the cost to get it graded, including, shipping back and forth. And so once you have that all-in number for all of those things, and if the book still has value, say that all-in cost for all of those things is $200, but and you think it could be, say, a 9.0, and the 9.0 of this book is, going for $400, well, now you have, a $200 wiggle room or, profit margin. So something like that, I would get graded, right? And because once you have the grade on it, there's no question, right? It's a 9.0. There's a lot of data in the, comic book, community and industry about the cost and what a 9.0 is selling for. So there's no there's no wiggle room in if I'm thinking it's an 8.0 and you think it's a 9.0, right? It's clear, it's graded, it's officially, stamped with a grade. And so that really kind of helps you maximize your profit because there's no subjectiveness to the condition of the book. So that is really, a tip that I use. If the book is only worth, $100 and it's going to cost you 75, to get it, acquire it and get it graded, well, that's only $25 worth of profit. You really need to make a decision whether that's worth it for you. And given some of the long lead times now at some of the grading companies, certainly CGC has a very long lead time. The price of that book could fluctuate, and so if you have a very small margin in your profit margin, it may not really be worth it because that book could be by the time you get it back from being graded, it could be at a lower cost than when you sent it in, or it could be higher. It really depends, but you have to take that into consideration. So. And generally, right? So I'm giving you these tips, my opinions on when to sell your book, but ultimately, it's really a personal decision, right? There are a lot of different factors, but it's really up to you when you want to sell. Obviously, depending on timing and where the market is, you may be able to get, have a lot of profit. You may have less profit, but it really depends on what your goal is. These books the books that I mentioned, the short boxes that I purchased, I really looked for those. I bought those books with the intention of flipping, and so there were a few other books in that lot that I had graded, and most of the other books I just let go raw. But I certainly made a lot more money than my initial $500 investment. So. And there were a few books that I was able to put into my own personal collection as well. So. It's really, like I said, it's a personal decision. So, take my tips with a grain of salt, but and then decide for yourself. So, I'd really love to have your feedback. What do you think? When do you think is the best time to sell your books? Drop me a comment. Let me know. What other tips would you recommend for selling or making a decision on when you should sell? Right. As always, I appreciate everybody who watches the channel, hits the like button for me. If you're not a subscriber, I would appreciate if you, would subscribe. It's free. Just hit that little button down below. It doesn't cost you anything. All of those things help the channel grow. So I do appreciate all of those things. I do appreciate everybody that watches my videos. So thank you, and we will talk soon.